All right, thank you. Yes. Sorry. Yes, so our first panelist is Anisha Suri. She's a data scientist at Gilead Sciences. She has a PhD in electrical and computer engineering from the University of Pittsburgh. And our second panelist is Fernanda Guisar, and she's a computational biologist at Brightseed. And she also holds a PhD in population biology from UC Davis. Lindsay Osimiri is a senior data scientist at Big Cat Biosciences. She has a PhD from a bioengineering and biomedical engineering from UC Berkeley. And Marisa Hurst, she's a bioinformatician, and she is also the owner of her own business offering bioinformatics services, Marisa Hurst LLC. She has a PhD in microbiology with an emphasis in biotechnology from UC Davis. And with that, I'm gonna stop sharing my screen so you could see our panelists. And yes, so let's do a quick round of introductions, something more that you would like everybody to know about you. Let's start from Fernanda.
Yes, so hi everyone, my name is Fernanda Guizar. I did my PhD at UC Davis, but before that I'm originally from Mexico and I studied agricultural engineering as an undergrad, and then I did a master's in integrative biology.
Marisa, do you want to go next?
Sure. Hi, everyone. I did my undergraduate at UC Berkeley in environmental sciences. And then I went on to do a master's at the University of Hawaii at Manoa in zoology, but with an emphasis on molecular biology on coral reefs. And then I did my PhD at UC Davis, as Emiko mentioned. I essentially got my start in industry by taking a postdoc in the research and development department of a really large California winery after I finished my PhD.
Lindsay, do you want to go next?
Yeah. Hi, all. I'm Lindsay Osimiri. I did my undergrad at MIT studying bioengineering, and I did my PhD at UC Berkeley and UCSF studying bioengineering as well. I actually did a lot of wet lab work, so working directly with cells in both my PhD and my undergrad, but I was really excited by using computational methods to analyze that data, which is how I got into data science. And I tried a lot of different data science options, like looking at consumer behavior while doing an internship with Ancestry. But I decided to come back to focusing in biotech, which is where I work now. Yeah.
Anisha?
Yeah, me. You guys can come off the camera if you're comfortable. But yeah, I'm Anisha. I'm a data scientist at Gilead, a little over 1.5 years here. I graduated in 2022 December, and my undergrad was in electronics and communication engineering. I grew up in Delhi in India, and fun fact, it was an all-women's engineering school, one of a kind, and which had like four branches. And I was fascinated by the signal and image processing field as such, and wanted to apply that in the healthcare applications, and that's how I proceeded into the master's and then PhD analyzing variable technology data at BIT. Yeah, happy to be here.
Thank you. And so you talk, you have a little bit of some varying backgrounds, but like what kind of roles were you looking at when you started, and what has drawn you to be in this particular design? I know Lindsay shared a little bit, but maybe you could expand a little bit on that. And let's start from you, Lindsay.
Yeah. So the question was what kind of roles or how did we become interested in the roles that we're working?
Yeah, and like what other, I mean, you did expand on like you consider a little bit of different roles as well, but if you could share that as well.
Yeah, so starting in undergrad, I was really excited by computer science, but I wanted to apply it to just like data in general. And so, of course, having done a PhD in undergrad in bioengineering, I was very familiar with biological data, but I wanted to try other options. And I knew that data science for things like consumer behavior was a really large and growing field as well. So I decided to do an internship during my PhD to get more experience in that. And that led me to understand that that wasn't necessarily my favorite area and that I was more excited by the working with biological data. So that's how I came back to working with data in biotech.
Anisha?
Yeah, sure. So I was more focused on like the electronics part of things. So used to work with micro systems or the chips or robotic arms and like blind follow robots kind of stuff during my undergrad. But when I was introduced to the signal and image processing and the mathematical equations, I was very fascinated, and specifically the biomedical signals. Then during my master's program, I tried to seek some laboratory internships or research work for like stroke images, like working with MRI imaging, and like just getting exposed to what healthcare data exists, both like in different modalities, so as to say, like images or the signals. And that's how I got interested in the field and or applying or becoming obsessed with healthcare data as such. And as for your second part of the question, which is about the roles that kind of exist, um, I, I s- I was like trying to decide between the academics and the industry part of the things during my grad studies, and got an internship opportunity. Here, the department was kind of forming. Um, and then like joined Gilead. That's how I ended up here. But as for the roles, there are like just plenty in terms of the traditional biostatistics or very statistics focused roles or programming roles, and then there are these data analyst or data engineer or more data sciencey or research scientist kind of roles, but like with a common denominator of some level of programming skills, and then like the creativity of a blend. I feel like all these different roles are just coming close together or have a lot of overlaps.
How about you, Marissa?
Yeah, I think that my background is a little non-conventional, I would say. So I did a little bit of work in the bioinformatics field during my PhD, and then I expanded that knowledge base during my postdoc. But then I kind of jumped ship from looking at biological data and transitioned to a job that was pretty heavily data science focused in energy efficiency. So in that world, we were estimating how specific programs could potentially save energy on the energy grid or consumer grid in various states. And then also actually calculating how much energy was saved from particular programs after they were run. So quite a bit of data across quite a few homes. But similar to Lindsay, I really just enjoyed the biological aspect of the data more so than the energy efficiency world. So that's when I started to branch out back into looking at bioinformatician roles in industry.
Fernanda?
Yeah, so similar to Marisa, I was finishing my PhD, and most of my work well, it was a mix between field work, lab work, but mostly bioinformatics, especially with the pandemic. There was no much option but to do a lot of bioinformatics work. So I was looking at positions as a computational biologist or bioinformatician in the industry. And for my master's and for my PhD, I worked with plant natural products and researching how different biosynthetic pathways evolve and the kind of compounds that plants produce. I was always fascinated by that. So I stumbled into this company called Brightseed where they're looking into just that and developing computational tools for how to explore the world of natural compounds.
Nice. Thank you for all sharing that. It's really kind of fun to see that even though you're like working in a semi-related field, like you're like have different experience coming into it. One question that I would like to ask, if any of you are so inclined, like I know you all have PhDs, and if somebody coming in that has a biology background but not necessarily are interested in going to doing more schooling, what are the options they have? Is their PhD required to do any work in your field? Feel free to, if any of you have a inclination to answer this question.
I can start and people can chime in. So I would say like having an advanced degree does give you kind of a jump start in terms of getting that in-depth knowledge and just building that research or that inquisitive kind of like attitude when you do that rigorous master's or a PhD program. But then in the end, it ultimately bottoms to the technical skill set that you have and supplemented with like communication and other skills to interpret that data and like make it presentable. So years of experience can, I would say, like compensate for like a PhD program. But yes, it's getting a bit competitive, and I have observed that especially in like biopharmaceutical companies, they're mostly even for internship screening like candidates based on like masters or PhD or above. So uh, like to me, it does make sense to get like an advanced degree.
Anybody else wants to add to that?
I would also agree with Anisha there. I think if you're self-motivated and you are able to work independently and use, critical thinking and your skill set analysis of whatever it is you're doing, if you have any opportunity to join a project where there's like a bioinformatics lean to it in your lab, or if you are working already in industry, but you're not working as a bioinformatician, and get curious, ask questions, see if you can potentially hop on a project or sit in on some of those meetings and learn what type of analyses they're using and how they're using it to apply to the data. I will say, I do think in my personal experience that more background and experience is what companies tend to lean towards rather than boot camps from my own personal experience, but you all might have different experiences than I do.
Does any of you work with somebody that just has a bachelor's degree doing some sort of bioinformatics work? No?
Yes, I do. I work with several people who have masters, not necessarily PhDs, but I really think it's contextual. So like, and again, this gets maybe outside of our scope of what we're talking about here, but as far as negotiating salary and things like that, it can be beneficial to have a more advanced degree. But I also think that some of the most interesting people I work with with the best and most detailed experience tend to not necessarily have a PhD.
So how about somebody that has a really strong computational background, but has very little biology background. Like, do you see them having an avenue to getting into a biotech field?
Yeah, I'll jump in for that question. I think it's totally possible. I think again, you would want to show some of that self-motivated interest. So we definitely have seen candidates who like have joined groups outside of work where they learn more about biology or do Kaggle competitions with biological data and kind of demonstrate that interest and excitement and focus for biology. And that helps a lot when they are interviewing at these biotech roles in data science.
Fernanda, do you want to add to that?
Yeah, I'll add that at the end of the day, you're also working as part of a team. So if you are not an expert in biology, you're still bringing a different perspective, a different set of skills, and something that you might not be an expert in a specific field in biology, but you'll be working with other people who are and will give you that.
How
Yeah,
about,
with
oh,
that.
sorry, go ahead.
So I was just gonna say I totally agree with that. Like, given my background too, I was not very sure that hey, I don't know biology stuff. What am I doing in a pharma company or things like that? But then you have like it's a big team. You're building a product together, and then you'll be collaborating with people with PharmD, and that's why it's a team. Like people have different skill sets, and you come together to accomplish something. But if you don't have and you don't know where to start, of course, Kaggle is a great place to begin. And there are a lot of like hackathons that happen university-wide, or that they are hosted on like around like local communities host. So you can show up for like a bio hackathon and just explore the data set and build something from there. It's a great way to learn and show interest in the domain.
And Anisha, so you have the least biology background in this group, and like, how did you upsell that like lack of like biology background when you were looking for your job?
Yeah, so during my master's program, actually, I was volunteering for quite a long time. Like volunteering, literally, like wasn't getting any pay or something. But with my coursework, I was trying to help with some research analysis for a lab in actually Children's Hospital LA. They had a lab looking at MRI scans of, and it was a very manual kind of task of looking at the data, running some pre-processing, cleaning up the MRI scans, and then, like there was a postdoctoral taking up these scans and doing the analysis part. But that's when I started to show and build my like experience or getting exposed to the domain. So you have to like kind of step out of your comfort zone and show your interest in the field. Start somewhere. Um, and then eventually like I landed up some interim RA positions like contractual positions in stroke labs and things like that. And then I sought recommendations from those professors to apply for PhD program, and they were able to uh, write nice things with my biology and some other stuff. So it worked out. It works out, but you have to start somewhere and like just step out of that mindset that you need to know everything.
Yeah, and like it sounds like also being curious, continuously being curious about your interest and pursuing opportunities to find where you could experience that is like really crucial to that. So another question is how does your so you work, well, some of you work with labs, so like and how much interactions do you have with the lab? Do you work in the lab? How much of that interaction do you see on an everyday basis? Maybe we'll start from Fernanda.
I do not go to the lab only if somebody wants to show me something for fun. And I'm so happy that I don't have to. It was not my strength during grad school. I do help people who are in the lab, and I like to understand their process. So sometimes when I have data, I like to understand better where it comes from. They might show me like, okay, they just give me a CSV file, and I have all this data. Sometimes I'm trying to interpret it, and it's like help us with the statistics, but it's like, what are you trying to do? What were the controls? What could go wrong? Like, where am I expecting to see technical error coming from? So at least having that background of at some point in my life having been pipetting myself helps with visualizing these things and where they are coming from. But other than that, yeah, I have very little to do in the lab.
How about you, Marisa?
Yeah, so I'm pretty far removed from the lab at this point, and I have been for several years. I would say that I work with a variety of clients that often partner with academic institutions or just generally institutions across the country, or sometimes academic labs. It really varies, or pharmaceutical companies. And so sometimes we do have to go back to the client and ask them, hey, what's the information that we're missing here? We're seeing like a strong effect and we can't figure out if it's from the donor or from, some other sample variation. And then other times we work directly with clients that are not bioinformaticians themselves, and they actually set up the experiments, which makes things a little bit easier.
Anisha, would you like to add some thoughts to this?
I've never worked in like a wet lab. I know there are like essays and stuff like terminologies here and there, but I'm mostly working with like clinical operational kind of data sets in which like when you do a clinical trial, how do you pick sites, countries, and those aspects of things. So um, not necessarily like lab data or outcomes to assess. But I've been in research labs, as I was sharing earlier, but not the wet labs.
Yeah, I feel like in biotech, I also want to note that a lab could mean a lot of things to people. So I just also want to specify that when I ask this question. So it could be a clinical lab, and that could be clients running clinical trials. So I also want to emphasize that there could be a variety of roles here. Lindsay, would you like to add a little bit of your experience?
Yeah, I work pretty closely with the lab. Like Fernanda, I don't go in the lab, but since I work with a lot of the biological data, it's really important sometimes to understand like the data generation process that helps us build more robust data pipelines so we can understand how we might see data failures and what those would look like. I also do a lot of work on data visualization. And so understanding how the lab interacts with the data is really key for building visualizations that are useful for the lab to use. Yeah, so I do a lot of interaction with the lab, not necessarily by me going in the lab or doing any experiments, but discussing a lot with them about where the data comes from.
And for the next question, I would want to focus on Lindsay and Marisa because you have been in the industry a little bit longer than the other two. And so from when you got started, how have you grown your career and what has motivated to go in the directions that you have pursued? Lindsay, would you like to start?
Yeah. So I've been in industry for a little over 2 years. And so I think some of the most important things that I've done to grow my career are basically working on like larger and larger projects. So I think one thing that's really important is kind of seeing opportunity, and rather than hoping someone else will fix it, kind of putting yourself forward as a person to fix it or to offer a solution or to offer to lead a team. So like I said, I work a lot in data visualization. Actually, that when I joined my company, that wasn't part of my job title at all, but we didn't have a lot of data visualization tools. And I thought it was really a loss in our company that only really data scientists and code owners could interact with the data and visualize it. And so something I was really excited about. And so I started working on building data visualization tools with just a few people in the company. And now it's like a really large part of what we work on, and I direct a lot of larger data visualization projects. And so that was one way, basically identifying an issue, putting forward a solution, getting other people invested from engineering, from the lab, et cetera, helped to kind of grow my kind of area of influence in my work. Yeah.
Marissa?
Yeah, thanks for asking. Definitely an important question. I have been in the biotech pharmaceutical world for the last almost 6 years at this point. So I've seen a lot of feasting, and I've seen a lot of famine, especially in the last year, with industry kind of being a little bit crazy right now. But I will echo a lot of what Lindsay said. I think one of the best things you can do is find your niche, either whether that's when you're working at a company and you find an area that's sort of not filled like Lindsay did, or a type of data analysis that they haven't actually used in the past that could be applicable to the data set you're looking at. Personally, for me, when I first started contracting for one of the companies I contract for right now, my main contracting company, I really sought again to also use visualization as a tool. So I worked quite a bit on the R Shiny side, which is a little, it's quite beta, so it's not without its own problems, but it really allowed me to present data to my clients in a way that was visually compelling and could tell a story, which I think is pretty integral to being a good data scientist or bioinformatician. And I also really built a niche in the single cell RNA-seq world, and also spatial transcriptomics. And I think those two fields are blowing up right now in the biotech industry. And so if you can kind of find an area that your company or your clients might be interested in analyzing and learn that skill set and be able to analyze data quickly and efficiently, then you're always going to have work, I think. Yeah. As far as like career steps for me personally, I'm, as Amiko mentioned, I own my own contracting business. So for me, it's really important to network when I go to conferences or when I talk to clients over LinkedIn, etc. And there are a couple different ways I could go. I could stay on the contracting route and hire some additional bioinformaticians to work for me as more of a data science, bioinformatics type company. Or if I wasn't interested in pursuing the contracting anymore, I could potentially move into an actual full-time position. And I think where I'm at right now, that would be like a director of bioinformatics position.
And for Fernanda and Anisha, like what are the type of projects that you're excited to pursuing right now, and like where do you see your career going from here? Fernanda, would you like to start?
Yeah, sure. So I started mostly with my PhD with bioinformatics, analyzing genome sequences and transcriptomic sequences. Right now, I'm exploring more into the area of using artificial intelligence to predict bioactivity for different types of compounds, and that is an area that I've been really excited about. It's moving more towards chemoinformatics. So I've been going to conferences and also learning a lot of the skills by myself. And that's the area that I'm currently excited about and wanting to learn and grow into.
Anisha?
Yeah, so right now, like From my PhD, I did like a lot of variable sensors and signals analysis, and gait specifically, like your walking patterns and your daily life mobility and that end. But right now, my focus is to support this operational strategy kind of project in which you're picking sites, countries, and recommending it to study teams using data-driven approaches. So these could include combining data from like various different data sets and doing deduplication, like cleaning up, combining different data sets, building predictive models of which sites have better enrollments or retentions. So that's like one of the challenges in clinical trials. How do you recruit participants? How do you retain them? And like also keeping the trial in the bounds of like the duration. The most exciting part of my job is to, of course, learn about the pharmaceutical industry from end to end, and then meeting so many clinical operation people and like innovation clinical development people, and to bridge that gap between the business problem and proposing solutions both from like the data end and the models. So not every problem requires like a machine learning model is my biggest learning in the last 1 or so years. Um, so that I think understanding the business problem, finding the right data set to answer it, and it just fascinates me. Just that is this the right data, and what's the quality of the data? Data quality is such a big thing. So I'm data obsessed. Anything related to data just excites me, and there's just so much to learn. There's so much to learn and explore. So for me, like right now, I want to continue growing into my technical skills and and understand and pursue more, bigger projects and collaborate and learn more about the different functions within the pharma companies, including medical affairs. And there is just so much happening around patient safety and um, other fields. So yep, that's the stage I'm at right now.
Thank you. Yeah, I feel like it's always strike me as you all like are really curious about your field and trying to like learn as much as possible. And with that, like I know somebody asked about AI and like how that, and also Fernanda, you started talking about that a little bit, but how is that important in your field, and how do you think it's going to be shaping the biotech industry in the coming years? Would you like to start, Anisha, now that?
Sorry, could you recenter the question?
Yeah, so how do you think the AI, like AI is, so this person is actually asking, is AI important in most of the biotech companies? And I was just adding, like, how do you think AI is going to be shaping the biotech industry?
Yeah, this is a big question. This is a the AI ML question is the talk of the town right now. So we have to understand we cannot like escape the influence of AI ML in our day-to-day also. And either we can join forces with the movement, or we'll be left behind, so to say. But pharma, I have seen, is generally very cautious about applying AI ML models, specifically if it has direct impact on like patient disease predictability or patient outcomes. That's something very caution, and the regulatory is very like there are like a lot of governance policies around that. But there are other opportunities in the operational space. That's I would say like the low hanging fruit of where the biopharma I'm seeing are applying in feasibility analytics of the studies, or how can you like the clinical protocols, the trial protocols, like how you can. So there are a lot of applications around which has like low impact on a patient's like outcome directly. are some of the areas where AI ML is seeing applications. And every company, as I'm also learning, is trying to establish that governance body internally and lay out the foundational rules of how can you build models to avoid bias and all sorts of bias in terms of the demographics and like other data that you are using to build those models. So something to catch up with, like we all need to know a bit of AI ML, like even though we are not aware of like the core mathematics, the equations, but we should catch up with applying some of the basic interpretable models, so to say. So model interpretability is a whole different thing. Like, so instead of building black box, you are building something which is interpretable. And I think that's very important in biotech. You can't just escape um, the influence of the explainable models and things like that. I can keep talking, so I should stop.
No, that's great. Does anybody else want to add to this?
I can add a little bit. So I agree completely with what Anisha is saying. It's kind of a buzzword right now. People want you to use it. People will want you to have the skills. It's important to understand what AI is, what it isn't, when it is applicable, when it's not. Sometimes you don't need a fancy model to answer a very simple question, or you might not even have enough data to build one. So I think just be cautious about that.
Yeah, I also, Big Hat, the company I work at, uses AI in antibody design. And I think, of course, AI is very important in biotech companies, but not always does the data scientists have to be doing AI. So in our company, data science handles the data and builds the data pipelines in order to create data sets that the ML team then works with. So of course, having some of the knowledge and lingo around AI is very useful, but you don't like necessarily need to be the one building the machine learning models yourself or with the most robust machine learning knowledge. Sometimes you can just be supporting and ensuring the quality of the data that those models are built on.
Yeah, I do want to add, like with this open source tools, Python, the building model has become quite easy. It has become more about understanding the data, the domain, and whether you're able to answer the question. Building a model takes, it's 20% of your task. The rest 80% is actually getting to that stage where you can apply the model. So then data becomes, your centerpiece, and like technology, people, and processes are like pillar, like some levers to pull and uh, like interact. So I want to say that.
Yeah, I would also just add, I was trained pretty classically in biostatistics through my master's, and I would say it's really important to understand the basic assumptions of your underlying model before you just apply any model to it. Oftentimes the data doesn't fit the basic assumptions of the model you're trying to apply to it. In that case, it's probably not the best model. So while AI is a great buzzword and it encompasses a lot of subsystems, I would say machine learning is just one of them. I would also say that it's relatively new. The models are still constantly evolving. And so when employers ask you to have experience in AI, I think a really smart way of answering that is to say, whatever your familiarity is, whether you've actually analyzed any data using AI, and also to be honest and say this field is rapidly evolving right now. So I don't think anybody really has 10 years of experience in AI personally. But anyway, just thought I'd add that.
No, that's great. And bringing a little bit to the skills and like what's required in the field. So like I'm gonna combine a couple of these questions here. So what type of skills do you think are the most important coming in, and what are you looking for in the interview process? I don't know, like maybe Lindsay, you're involved in hiring. I know we talked about hiring a little bit in the spring, so maybe you could start.
Yeah, I think a couple of important skills. So just of course technical skills with like how you handle data, how you code are of course very important. But I think it's not just, the kind of hard skills of how you wrangle a data frame and things like that. It's also how you interpret data, which I think Anisha was kind of discussing before. How do you notice faults with the data? How do you notice different failures that we might have observed or values that are unexpected? Are all kind of things we look for in our interview process. And so being able to be kind of a data detective as well as a computational, like have those computational skills are very important. And then, of course, I think as some people have talked about before, communication skills. I think data science is a really technical, but also a really like uses those soft skills a lot because often you are working between the scientists as well as the engineers as well as the business people. And so you need to be able to explain your work to all of those people. So I think those are all kind of skills that we look for a lot in our interview process.
Does anybody want to add to this? And like also some of the process that you have used in the interview? Like what kind of specific task do you give to people, presentations, or is it like code challenge?
Yeah.
So, so at my company, for example, we give a prompt, which is a very, very broad question of, okay, you have this problem, come up with an idea of how you try to solve it. Because what we want to understand is how people think. How would they even start addressing a research question? Like the timelines, how would they organize their resources? If they would need to collaborate with people inside the company, who would they ask for help? So we just want to understand if they can work as a team, if they can really identify what they lack and what they will need from other people and how they would organize in general just a whole research plan.
Lindsay, did you want to add more?
Oh, yeah. I was just going to say we do have a take-home like coding challenge. So some companies will also have something like that.
All right, thank you. So let's start wrapping up since we're almost at the hour, but what is your favorite data tool? Fernanda, do you want to start?
Let me think. I would say pandas because I use it all the time, every single day.
Marisa?
I think my answer is a little more general. I pretty much like any tool that's easily adjustable, meaning it's well coded, easy to adjust parameters or code with an excellent README. Like, so if you're using something on GitHub by an individual contributor, I'm pretty data agnostic as long as the code is efficient, I can read it, see what they're doing, and they actually respond to their issues log pretty regularly. Yeah.
Anisha?
I really enjoy the Jupyter interface and working with Python. It's just so easy to like load data and quickly get like some initial insights on the data while like, it really feels like a notebook. It is called a notebook, a Jupyter notebook. And you can easily like access, write notes wherever you feel. And then it gives you like a nice start when you're actually writing functions or like coding those blocks of applications. So I really enjoy Jupyter notebooks.
How about you, Lindsay?
I'd say anything with visualization. So probably Plot9 or Seaborn are really great data tools to help you visualize whatever you're looking at.
Awesome. And so I want to open it up the floor to like anybody wants to ask any questions, any burning questions that you like to ask. Feel free to unmute yourself if you like, or put it in the chat. Or if I managed to miss some questions. Anna, do you have anything that I didn't cover here?
I think everything was covered. Maybe someone asked about what kind of data you usually work with. I would be interested also to learn about that. Is it structured? Is it unstructured? Anything?
Yeah, anybody feel free to answer this.
For me, it's mostly structured data in different tables. So mostly like tabular data coming in from different sources. And, at least the current focus is that.
Yeah, similarly, I work with a lot of structured data. Our data often comes from like instruments where we run assays. And so we have our engineering team build parsers to turn those into like very structured data. And from there, we build data pipelines on that.
I work with
Fernanda.
some metabolomics data, so mass spectra data and annotations, and then smiles that represent chemical compounds, their structures.
I would say I work with both.
It's interesting. Like I kind of had the assumption that you all work with genomics data, but maybe that's not always the case. Okay, so one last word that you would like to share with the folks they're interested in pursuing, like any advice or anything, or they should do or should not do. If you would like to share any thoughts. Marisa, would you like to start?
Sure. I think my thoughts are more general, high level. I think we all, to some extent, have at some point suffered from imposter syndrome at some point in our career. I would say just remember that you are the only person who can advocate for yourself. Your boss isn't going to do it, your colleagues aren't going to do it. You have to do it for yourself. And in particular, being a woman in a field like this, it's highly competitive. So you really need to advocate for yourself. Know your worth, know how much you're worth, know your skill set, be able to present that well to your bosses or your clients, and continue to learn new skills. I think that's the most important thing, so you can stay relevant in the field.
Anisha?
Marisa, that was so good. It's so hard to to match up to that wonderful advice. I'm taking that advice too. Um, I just say that, you know, don't hold yourself back, and always don't be afraid to like reach out for help. Sometimes we hesitate and like reaching out, you know, like or thinking that, oh, we don't even know this thing, and then just beat ourselves up to it. I think like just admit your skills, be willing to grow, and reach out. There's this whole big community, and you know it's all small stuff, and everybody here is trying to, you know, just make through it. So just reach out.
Lindsay, would you like to follow?
Yeah, I'd like to echo something I think Marissa said earlier. I think something really useful is like finding what excites you and finding your niche. If you're focused on just kind of like where the market's moving, the market will always be moving. It's much better to figure out like what you're really excited about and what you can bring your own expertise to and really drive forward in that area. So, you know, the market is really hot on AI, but I really love data viz. We'll always need to visualize something. And so that's kind of an area that I'm continuing to evolve and improve in. And so I'd encourage everyone to find out what kind of really makes them excited and want to keep working and focus in that area.
Fernanda?
Yeah, so also related to something that Lindsay had said before, do not underestimate soft skills. They are extremely important and they're actually harder than I thought they would be so easy, but no, communicating effectively is actually pretty hard and it's something that you have to be practicing and improving constantly.
Yeah, those are really great points. And I will say that a little bit of it's opening a window to like for me to pitch Wunamic data. We do have a lot of events that cater to strengthening your soft skills and including some mentorships programs. So, and if any of you out there are also interested in being a mentor, we're always looking for mentors. So please reach out. You could find information about Wunamic data again on the website. We also have a LinkedIn page and a forum that you could check out, as well as the Bay Area chapter has the meetup. That's where we really post the events. So feel free to reach out also if you have any questions about women in big data. And with that, I really want to thank all of you for sharing all this. Yeah, thank you, like Annette, for sharing the website. And thank you all for sharing your wise words and all of your experience. I really think that we don't hear enough about each individual industry. So I was really excited to hear what you all have to share. And yeah, thank you. And I hope you'll, oh, and if anybody wants to get in touch with you, please feel to share any, I don't know what you all have these days. I feel like LinkedIn has become the primary source for people to communicate these days instead of now that the Twitter is not as popular anymore, but feel free to share that on the chat. And yeah, thank you all.
Thank you for
Thank you for
organizing.
great minds think alike. And